Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking the breathtaking scale and the deeply troubling controversies behind the largest modern Hindu temple outside of India. We're looking at the BAPS Swaminarayan Akshardham in Robbinsville, New Jersey. It is a site of absolute architectural majesty, but it's also the center point of a massive, ongoing legal debate. 167. Just think about that number for a second. That is the staggering number of acres this colossal complex covers. What started out as a plot of land originally zoned for a generic warehouse was somehow transformed into an entirely solar-powered spiritual epicenter right in the heart of suburban New Jersey. To really grasp this complex legacy, here is our roadmap. First, a monumental vision. Then, architectural marvel. Third, the hidden human cost. Fourth, the meaning of seva. And finally, the ongoing legal battle. Okay, starting with Section 1, a monumental vision. Let's look at how this 50-year dream was actually realized.
For the hundreds of thousands of visitors and congregants who come here, the Akshardham is described as this incredible beacon of harmony and mindfulness. It's seen as a brilliant bridge between cultures. As one visitor actually put it, it's almost like you're walking through a book, and everywhere you look is another story. Every single carving, every pillar holds a much deeper meaning.
Built to capture thousands of years of Hindu history, this site fulfills a 50-year vision laid out by BAPS leaders. And what's really incredible is the community reach here. Over 50% of recent visitors are actually non-Hindus, just coming to experience the culture. The site has fostered immense local pride. It literally served as an emergency shelter during Hurricane Sandy, it hosts blood drives, and it unites the community through this deeply held concept of seva, or selfless service. Which, keep that in mind, because we're definitely coming back to it.
Moving on to Section 2, Architectural Marvel, the journey from a warehouse to a temple. What's really fascinating here is that this massive celestial vision had to be grounded in the meticulous everyday reality of municipal zoning. Transforming a former warehouse tract into a 75-foot-high Mahamandir didn't just happen by magic. It took years of complex planning board approvals, expert engineering testimonies, traffic studies, and environmental assessments right here in Robbinsville. The sheer logistics of managing stormwater basins and local traffic flows for a campus of this size is absolutely staggering. But the physical result of all that planning, it's an absolute masterclass in design. We are talking about millions of hours of hand-carved pink limestone imported directly from Rajasthan, India. The perfectly symmetrical campus is connected by this gorgeous parikrama, or covered walkway, and they seamlessly blended ancient design with highly sustainable modern engineering. They've concealed rooftop mechanicals to preserve the aesthetics, and the whole place generates 100% of its electricity via massive on-site solar fields. But right as we're marveling at this architectural achievement, we have to acknowledge the other side of this story. Because as one worker stated in a civil complaint, people appreciate the art, but they don't know the blood. And this takes us directly into the dark realities alleged by the very hands that carved those stones. Section 3, the hidden human cost. Let's look at the allegations of abuse. According to court documents and multiple reports, 200 Dalit workers were brought over to New Jersey to build this monument. Now, if you're not familiar, Dalits are members of India's lowest and historically most marginalized caste. A civil lawsuit alleges that these men were subjected to extreme exploitation. The claim is that they were earning as little as $1.20 an hour for their highly skilled masonry work. Just $1.20. And it gets worse. The lawsuit further claims these men endured grueling 90-hour work weeks. Workers allege they were even forced to labor outside in the bitter New Jersey snow without a single day off to recover. The allegations of abuse actually go quite a bit deeper. Workers claim their passports were confiscated right upon arrival, effectively trapping them. They allege they were isolated from their families for years at a time. Plus, despite cutting stone, which produces this incredibly dangerous, fine silica dust, workers claim they were denied vital protective equipment. They say they were refused N95 masks and were often given simple surgical masks, or sometimes nothing at all. They also allege they were heavily discouraged from seeking outside medical care, and anyone who fell seriously ill was reportedly put on a plane straight back to India. Tragically, this alleged medical neglect had a fatal toll. Labor advocates state that at least 2 of these workers, Ramesh Meena and Devi Lal, died from silicosis. Silicosis is a horrifying, irreversible lung disease caused by inhaling that fine stone dust. Others have reportedly developed tuberculosis and chronic bronchitis. So, we're faced with a big question here.
How are these drastically different narratives, a spiritual haven versus a site of forced labor, reconciled by the parties involved?
That brings us to Section 4, the meaning of seva, faith versus exploitation. So the religious organization, BAPS, relies heavily on the spiritual concept of seva, which translates to selfless giving, to explain the workforce that built the temple. They argue that these men were not traditional employees at all, but rather religious volunteers contributing to a monumental act of faith.
And this perfectly illustrates our core legal conflict. You have BAPS vigorously defending the project, stating these men were safe religious volunteers on R1 visas. They say they provided government-inspected housing, full meals, medical care, and unmonitored internet access, entirely denying the forced labor allegations. But conversely, human rights advocates and the workers characterize the whole operation as deliberate R1 visa fraud. They argue this was modern slavery, exploiting the marginalized Dalit caste through debt bondage and exposing them to lethal silica dust, all under the guise of religious devotion.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, the ongoing legal battle.
This conflict has resulted in a really messy legal timeline. Tracking the history, you see the early architectural approvals back in 2008, leading up to a land blessing in 2014. But then there was a shocking FBI raid in 2021 that removed 90 workers from the site following these allegations of forced labor. Despite that massive disruption, the temple still had its grand opening in 2023. And now, as of 2024, the civil suit against the organization has officially resumed.
Now, it's crucial to point out that the Department of Justice actually closed the criminal investigation recently without bringing any charges. However, the civil lawsuit, which was paused during that federal probe, is completely active again. The workers are demanding back pay and compensation for the incurable illnesses they contracted. Meanwhile, human rights groups are aggressively petitioning to enforce better labor protections, and they're even calling for a ban on R1 visas to prevent this alleged loophole from ever being used again. Experts point out that this tragedy isn't just an isolated incident in New Jersey either. It's intertwined with a much larger historical cycle of exploitation. You see, despite India's Bonded Labor Act of 1976, which was specifically designed to end forced labor, those laws are often poorly enforced. This systemic failure continually traps marginalized Dalit communities in cycles of debt and vulnerability that literally follow them across the globe.
This brings up a really profound, honestly uncomfortable question about where we draw the line between genuine religious devotion and economic exploitation. Human rights attorney Gunjan Singh summarized it brilliantly, saying religious volunteerism can happen with people who have means to feed themselves, not for somebody who is doing a job primarily to feed themselves.
And that leaves us right here, as we stand in awe of these modern architectural marvels. Marvels that genuinely bridge cultures and foster community peace. We have to simultaneously confront the realities of their creation. So, how should we balance our appreciation for breathtaking cultural monuments with the human toll required to build them? What is the true cost of such beauty, and who ultimately pays the price? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.